The aliens thought it would be an easy victory, a quick, clean surprise attack on an unmarked world. But there was one problem. They never checked the planet's name. And when they learned it was Earth, it was already too late. The confident invasion? War Council chamber aboard the Velcron flagship Dominions. Edge glowed with soft purple light as Admiral Zalth reviewed the holographic projection before him. The blue and green planet rotated slowly in the display, its white clouds swirling in delicate patterns across the surface. It looked peaceful, almost inviting. Zalth's four fingers traced calculations in the air as his secondary. Eyes analyzed the data streaming from the preliminary scans. Science Officer Kryn stood at attention, her chitinous plates gleaming under the chamber lights. She had compiled the initial report on this world. The third planet from a yellow dwarf star, the locals apparently called Sol. The inhabitants had designated their world with various names. But the most common translation came through as Admiral Zalf found the name unremarkable. Soon it would simply be known as Velcron Colony 73, the Velcron. Empire had successfully integrated 72 worlds into their civilization over the past 3 centuries. Each conquest followed the same proven pattern. Arrival, demonstration of superior force, negotiation of surrender terms, and integration. The process was refined, predictable, and remarkably efficient. This world would be no different. Despite the curious notation Kryn had discovered in their ancient database files, Kryn hesitated before speaking, which was unusual for her. Admiral, there is something in the old survey records. This planet was classified by the precursor civilizations as a Class 9 survival world. The recommendation from 15,000 years ago suggests extreme caution when approaching such planets. Zalth waved a dismissive hand, his expression showing mild amusement. The precursors abandoned the galaxy long before the Velcron even achieved spaceflight. Their classifications are outdated curiosities, nothing more. Look at the current scans. The inhabitants have barely achieved orbital capability. They use chemical rockets. Their weapons are primitive kinetic projectiles and low-yield fusion devices. They cannot even unite their own species. The planet is divided into nearly 200 separate governing bodies, many of which are actively hostile to each other. The tactical officer, a younger male named Torvik, projected additional data into the holographic display. Admiral, our intelligence suggests these humans, as they call themselves, spend considerable resources fighting among themselves. Their military doctrines are focused on defeating each other, not defending against external threats. They have no orbital defense platforms, no energy shields, no faster than light capability. By every metric, they are centuries behind us technologically. Zalth nodded with satisfaction. The assessment confirmed his own analysis. The Velcron Empire possessed energy weapons that could level cities from orbit. Their ships moved faster than light itself. Their ground forces wore armor that could withstand anything these humans could deploy. The invasion would be swift and decisive. Prepare the fleet for final approach, Zalth commanded. We will follow standard protocol. Disable their military infrastructure with surgical orbital strikes. Destroy their communication satellites to prevent coordinated response. Then broadcast surrender terms in their major languages. I expect them to capitulate within 48 hours, as previous pre-faster-than-light civilizations have done. Kryn remained standing, her posture uncertain. Admiral, I would feel more comfortable if we conducted additional reconnaissance. The Class 9 designation specifically warns about species that have survived extreme environmental pressures. Earth shows evidence of dramatic climate variations, aggressive megafauna in its fossil record, and numerous mass extinction events. The dominant species evolved under conditions that would be lethal to most spacefaring civilizations. Zalth's patience was wearing thin. Science officer, your concerns are noted and dismissed. I see no evidence that these humans pose any significant threat. They live in comfortable cities. They have entertainment industries. They create art and music. These are not the savage survivors your ancient database fears. These are civilized beings who will recognize the futility of resistance when confronted with our superiority. The decision is made. We proceed as planned. The fleet consisted of 80 warships, a force sufficient to conquer most worlds in the known galaxy. Zalf had commanded successful invasions of 12 previous worlds. He understood the psychology of conquest. Once the primitives witnessed the power arrayed against them, once they understood that resistance meant only death and destruction, they would surrender. It was inevitable. It was always inevitable. The Velcron armada dropped out of faster than light, travel at the edge of Earth's solar system on what the humans measured as a Tuesday morning. The transition was precise, calculated to position the fleet for maximum strategic advantage. Zalth allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as the formation held perfectly, each ship in its designated position. The humans would look up at their sky and see doom approaching. They would understand their world had changed forever. The first strikes began exactly as planned. Orbital bombardment platforms targeted the largest military installations on the planet. Precision energy beams lanced down from space, turning concrete and steel into vapor. Communication satellites became expanding clouds of debris. Command centers that had taken decades to build ceased to exist in microseconds. The technical execution was flawless. Then Zalth activated the surrender broadcast. The message had been translated into 47 Earth languages by the fleet's linguistic computers. It was direct and clear. Inhabitants of the third planet, you have been selected for integration into the Velcron Empire. Your military resistance is futile. Surrender your forces immediately. You have 24 hours to comply. Failure to surrender will result in escalating consequences. Zalth expected panic. He expected desperate pleas for mercy. He expected chaos as their governments collapsed into confusion. Instead, the response that came back through every communication channel made no sense whatsoever. From the continent they called North America came a simple phrase, "Come and take it." From Europe, a longer message explained in graphic detail exactly what the humans intended to do to the Velcron forces, though the translators struggled with several of the more colorful expressions. From Asia, a flood of communications that seemed to be organizing rather than panicking. But the most disturbing response came simultaneously from multiple sources across the planet. It was a reference the Velcron computers could not fully contextualize. It mentioned something called Pearl Harbor, followed by another reference to something called 9/11. The linguistic analysis suggested these were historical moments when the humans had been attacked by surprise. But why would they reference being attacked in the past when facing attack in the present? Torvik studied the incoming data with growing concern. Admiral, something unexpected is happening. The human military forces are not scattering. They are repositioning. And they are not fighting each other anymore. Every single one of their military assets is now oriented toward us. Zal felt the first cold touch of doubt creep into his confidence. That made no sense. Pre-faster-than-light civilizations always fractured under the stress of invasion. Internal divisions became overwhelming. Yet the data was clear. Ancient enemies were ceasing hostilities with each other. Military forces that had been aimed at neighboring nations were now turning outward. The humans were not collapsing into chaos. They were uniting. Science Officer Kring pulled up additional analysis, her voice quiet. Admiral, I am detecting something else. The human global communication network, what they call the internet, is exploding with activity, but it is not panic. The emotional analysis suggests anger, determination, and something our computers are flagging as dangerous humor. They are making jokes about us, jokes? Zalf could not comprehend how a species facing orbital bombardment would respond with humor. What kind of jokes? Kryn displayed several translated messages. One read, "Alien invasion on a Tuesday. Figures. I just wanted coffee." Another stated, "They came to the wrong planet. Wait until they meet Florida." A third simply said, "Remember, no alien." The linguistic computer flagged this last one. as a reference to some sort of historical military operation. Though the context remained unclear, the landing craft deployed as scheduled, descending through the atmosphere toward strategic positions around the planet. Zalth watched the deployment with growing unease. Everything was proceeding according to plan, yet nothing felt right. The humans should have been broken by now. Instead, they seemed almost eager for what came next. The first landing force touched down at a military installation in the region called Nevada. The base had been destroyed by orbital strikes, its structures reduced to rubble and smoke. Ground Commander Vex reported successful landing and began scanning for survivors to accept surrender. Instead, his scanners detected movement all around his position. Organized movement, coordinated movement, then the missiles struck. The ambush was total and devastating. Humans had positioned themselves in the ruins, waiting for the landing craft to settle before opening fire with every weapon they possessed. Vex's shields held against the initial barrage, but barely. His tactical display showed human forces emerging from underground bunkers that the orbital scans had somehow missed. They were not fleeing. They were attacking. Commander Vex transmitted frantically. "Command, we require immediate support. The humans are not surrendering. They are everywhere. They know exactly where we landed. This was a trap. They wanted us to come down. Admiral, I think they were waiting for us across the planet." Identical scenarios unfolded. Every landing site became a battlefield. The humans fought with intensity that shocked the Velcran forces. When their vehicles were destroyed, they continued on foot. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they used whatever they could find. When cornered, they did not surrender. They fought harder in the command center of the Dominion's edge. Admiral Zalth stared at the tactical displays, showing red indicators spreading across every landing zone. His invasion force was not conquering. It was being systematically torn apart by primitives who should have been terrified. Kryn stood beside him, her voice carefully neutral. "Admiral, perhaps we should review that Class 9 designation more carefully. I believe the precursors were trying to warn us about exactly this." Zalth said nothing. He simply watched as his confident invasion transformed into something he had never experienced in 12 previous conquests. He watched as humanity showed the Velcran Empire what it truly meant to attack a species that had spent millions of years fighting for survival on a world that had tried to kill them since before they discovered fire. The ancient warning had been correct. They should never have come to Earth. The invasion had begun. But so had the Velcran Empire's education in fear, the awakening. Emergency session of the United Nations Security Council convened in a bunker 300 meters beneath Manhattan. Representatives from every permanent member nation sat at the reinforced table, their faces illuminated by the glow of tactical displays showing real-time updates from battlefields across the globe. For the first time in the organization's history, every single member nation had voted unanimously on a resolution. The measure was simple and unprecedented. Total unity against the extraterrestrial threat. Secretary General Chen stood at the head of the table, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding above them. The aliens made a critical miscalculation. They assumed our divisions made us weak. They did not understand that humans have always been at our most dangerous when we have a common enemy. As of this moment, every conflict on Earth has ceased. Every military force on this planet now serves a single purpose. General Morrison from the United States Military Command pulled up footage from the Nevada ambush. The Velcran forces had superior technology, but they fought like a species that had never faced real resistance. Their tactics were rigid, predictable. They expected surrender, not strategy. We have been studying their movements for 72 hours now. They do not adapt quickly. They rely entirely on their technological advantage. That is their weakness. A Russian colonel leaned forward, his expression grim but determined. "My forces have captured one of their soldiers. The creature is terrified. It keeps asking why we do not surrender. It cannot comprehend why we continue fighting when they have better weapons. I think these beings have conquered so many worlds that they have forgotten what real war looks like. The Chinese military liaison activated another display showing a downed Velcrin scout ship that had crashed in the Gobi Desert. Recovery teams had reached it within hours. Our engineers are already examining their technology. The ship uses principles we understand but have not yet implemented. Their energy shields operate on modulated frequencies. Their propulsion system bends space rather than pushing through it. Their weapons convert matter directly to energy. All of this is theoretically possible with our physics. We simply had not achieved it yet. Secretary General Chin absorbed this information with growing hope. How long until we can replicate their technology? The engineer on the video feed, a woman named Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Japan, answered immediately. Under normal circumstances, decades? But these are not normal circumstances. We have research teams from 40 nations working simultaneously. We are sharing all data without restriction. We have abandoned patent protections, national security classifications, and competitive advantages. Every discovery is immediately distributed to every team worldwide. At this pace, weeks, maybe days for basic applications. The room fell silent as the implications settled. Humanity was about to make a technological leap that should have taken generations. The aliens had brought their advanced technology directly to Earth's surface, and humans were taking it apart to understand how it worked. Every crashed ship became a classroom. Every captured weapon became a blueprint. Admiral Keita from the African Union Naval Forces stood and gestured to a map showing ocean territories. We are also learning their patterns. The Velcron fleet maintains fixed orbital positions. They rotate on a predictable schedule. They have not adapted their formation despite our attacks on their landing parties. This suggests they are following a predetermined invasion protocol. They conquered other worlds with the same approach, and it worked. So they see no reason to change. A Brazilian general added his observation. Our forces in the Amazon have been using guerrilla tactics that seem to completely confuse them. They cannot track our movements through dense forest. Their sensors are designed for open terrain and urban environments. When we strike and fade into the jungle, they send forces to search for us in the exact location we just left. They do not predict. They only react. General Morrison pulled up casualty reports. The numbers were devastating. Millions dead from the initial orbital strikes. Thousands more dying daily in ground combat. Entire cities reduced to rubble. But the report also showed something else. Velcron casualties were climbing steadily. Their landing forces were being ground down by attrition. They had expected a quick surrender. Instead, they were trapped in a prolonged war against an enemy that refused to break. Then Dr. Tanaka appeared on screen again, her expression showing exhaustion and excitement in equal measure. We have a breakthrough. The shield technology works by creating a resonance field that deflects kinetic and energy weapons. But the field has to cycle through different frequencies to remain stable. We have identified the cycle pattern. If we time our weapons to fire during the frequency transitions, we can penetrate their shields within 6 hours. The discovery was implemented in weapons systems across every human military force. Modified missiles, adjusted energy weapons, and recalibrated timing systems began appearing on battlefields worldwide. The next Velcron landing force that descended into Europe found themselves facing weapons that punched through their shields, as if they were not there. The aliens retreated in confusion, unable to understand how primitives had defeated their most advanced defensive technology. Aboard the Dominion's Edge, Admiral Zalth watched his carefully planned invasion crumble. 72 hours ago, he had commanded 80 warships and expected swift victory. Now he had 73 ships. Having lost 7 to attacks, he still did not fully understand. His ground forces were requesting evacuation from multiple continents. His supply lines were strained, and the humans showed no signs of surrendering. Science Officer Kryn presented her latest analysis with visible distress. Admiral, I have been studying the human response patterns. They are learning faster than should be possible. They have somehow defeated our shield technology. They are using our own weapons against us. They have reverse engineered our communications protocols and are now listening to our transmissions in 72 hours. They have advanced their technological capability by what should require decades of research. Tactical officer. Torvik added more troubling news. Admiral, we've also lost contact with 3 scout ships. They simply vanished from our sensors. We believe the humans have captured them intact and are studying them. If they gain access to our faster-than-light technology, they will be able to reach our territory. Zalth felt panic rising, an emotion he had not experienced since his youth. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be divided. They were supposed to surrender. Instead, they had united with terrifying speed and were now stripping away every Velcron. Advantage through sheer determination and adaptation. Commander Rex. Now evacuated from the surface after his unit took catastrophic losses. Stood before the Admiral with his armor scorched and damaged. Sir, you do not understand what it is like down there. The humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. They set traps. They use the terrain against us. They attack from directions we did not know existed. And when we corner them, when we have them surrounded with no escape, they do not surrender. They detonate explosives and take our soldiers with them. They are willing to die if it means killing us. Zalth tried to maintain composure. All species resist initially. They will break eventually. But even as he said it, he knew it was not true. The humans were not going to break. They were adapting, learning, and becoming more dangerous with every passing day. On Earth, the technological revolution continued at breakneck pace. The captured Velcran ships yielded their secrets under the scrutiny of thousands of human engineers and scientists working without sleep. The faster-than-light drive was incredibly complex, but the principles were understandable. Space could be compressed ahead of a vessel and expanded behind it, allowing effective faster-than-light travel without violating physics. Human engineers began designing their own version using materials and manufacturing techniques available on Earth. In Australia, a team successfully test-fired the first human-built energy weapon based on Velcron designs. In India, researchers cracked the alien computing systems and gained access to star charts showing Velcron territory. In Canada, scientists developed a countermeasure to the alien sensors, rendering human forces effectively invisible to Velcron detection systems. The global communication networks that the Velcron had tried to destroy proved resilient. Humans had built redundant systems, underground cables, and alternative technologies precisely because they had spent centuries preparing for war with each other. Now those preparations were being used against the invaders. Every discovery was shared instantly. Every breakthrough was implemented globally within hours. Secretary General Chin addressed the world in a broadcast that reached every surviving human settlement. The aliens came here expecting us to surrender. They judged us by our divisions and assumed we were weak. They did not understand that humans have been fighting and surviving on this planet for millions of years. We evolved in a world of predators. We survived ice ages. We overcame plagues. We built civilizations from nothing. And yes, we fought each other. But that was practice. Now we face the real test. And we will show these invaders what humanity truly means. The broadcast was intercepted by Velcran forces. Their linguistic computers translated it perfectly. But understanding the words and understanding their meaning were two different things. The Velcran could not comprehend a species that viewed millions of years of struggle as preparation. They could not understand beings who refused to accept defeat even when facing superior technology. Admiral Zalth made his decision. He opened a priority channel to the Velcran High Command, knowing that his career was likely over regardless of what happened next. This is Admiral Zalth commanding the Earth Invasion Fleet. I am requesting immediate reinforcements. The human resistance is far beyond initial projections. We require additional ships, additional troops, and revised strategic assessment. The initial intelligence was catastrophically incomplete. The response came back within hours. The High Command was sending 300 additional warships, the largest fleet ever assembled by the Velcran Empire. They would crush this human resistance and make an example of Earth. The primitives would learn that defying the Velcran meant extinction, but as Zelth received these orders, he watched his tactical display showing human military movements across the planet. They were not scattered. They were not panicking. They were preparing, building fortifications, manufacturing weapons, training with captured Velcran equipment, and worst of all, they were learning to use the faster-than-light technology. Science Officer Kryn stood beside him, her voice quiet. Admiral, the Class 9 designation was not about the humans being primitive. It was about them being survivors. Every species the precursors encountered from survival worlds shared one trait. They never stopped fighting. They never surrendered. They adapted to any threat. The precursors left those worlds alone because conquering them was impossible. The cost was always too high. ZL stared at the blue planet rotating on his display. He had condemned thousands of Velcran soldiers to death through his arrogance. He had triggered a conflict that might destroy his entire empire. And he had done it all because he had not believed a warning written 15,000 years ago by beings far wiser than himself. The reinforcement fleet was coming. 300 warships would arrive in 2 weeks. But Zelth knew with cold certainty that it would not be enough, because humanity had been awakened, and when a survival species united against a common threat, when they turned all their creativity and determination toward a single goal, they became unstoppable. Earth was about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The new galactic order, the reinforcement fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system like a wave of metal and fury. 300 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the distant light of the sun. Fleet Commander Thane stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Imperial Mandate, reviewing the tactical situation with growing irritation. Admiral Zelth had failed to conquer a single primitive planet with 80 ships. Now, Thane would show him how a proper conquest was conducted. The commander opened a channel to all ships in the fleet. We will not repeat the mistakes of the initial invasion force. We will not underestimate these humans. We will deploy overwhelming firepower and crush any resistance before it can organize. Prepare orbital bombardment of their 50 largest population centers. We will break their spirit before we land a single soldier. But even as Thane gave these orders, his sensors detected something that should not have been possible. A ship was approaching the fleet. A single vessel, crude in design, but unmistakably using faster-than-light propulsion. The humans had achieved in 2 weeks what most species required centuries to develop. The ship broadcast a message in perfect Velcran language. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force, Ship Defiance. You are trespassing in human territory. Turn back now or face the consequences. Your first fleet learned to regret their choice. You will too. Thane felt insult burn through him. A primitive in a barely functional ship was threatening the largest battle fleet ever assembled by the Velcran Empire. He targeted the human vessel with every weapon system on his dreadnought. Destroy that insect. The Defiance vanished in a flash of light, jumping to faster-than-light speed before the weapons could lock on. Thane felt satisfaction for a moment, assuming the human had fled in terror. Then his sensors screamed warnings. The human ship had not retreated. It had jumped deeper into Velcran territory, 3 light years away to a supply depot that serviced the invasion fleet. The depot had minimal defenses because it existed in Velcran space, surrounded by dozens of colony worlds and military installations. It had never needed protection because no enemy had ever reached it. The Defiance appeared in orbit above the depot and opened fire with weapons that should not have existed on a human vessel. Modified Velcran energy cannons tore through the station's shields. Missiles that the humans had reverse-engineered slammed into fuel storage tanks. Within minutes, the depot was a spreading cloud of debris and escaping atmosphere. Then the Defiance jumped away again, vanishing before the automated defense platforms could respond. The message was clear and terrifying. Humans could now strike anywhere in Velcran territory. The hunters had become the hunted. On Earth, humanity prepared for the largest battle in their history. Every military force on the planet was positioned and ready. The weapons factories that had been working around the clock for 2 weeks had produced thousands of modified missiles equipped with shield-penetrating warheads. The energy weapons that scientists had developed were mounted on every available platform. And most importantly, humanity had learned to fight as one species with one purpose. General Morrison stood in the Global Command Center, now relocated to a facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. He watched the massive Velcran fleet approaching Earth with grim determination. The tactical displays showed 300 enemy warships against humanity's hastily assembled defense force of captured alien vessels, modified Earth ships, and converted orbital platforms. The numbers were not favorable, but humans had never won by having better numbers. They won by being unpredictable, adaptable, and absolutely refusing to surrender. The Velcran fleet entered Earth orbit and immediately launched their bombardment. Energy beams lanced down toward major cities, but they struck shields. The humans had spent 2 weeks installing Volcron shield generators around every major population center. The beams scattered and dissipated against the protective barriers. The attack that should have killed millions instead announced that humanity now possessed the technology to defend itself. Then Earth struck back. Thousands of missiles launched simultaneously from hidden silos, from mobile platforms, from submarines lurking in deep ocean. They rose on pillars of fire and streaked toward the Velcran fleet. The aliens activated their point defense systems and destroyed 90% of the incoming ordnance. But 10% penetrated the defenses, and those missiles had been designed by humans who had studied Velcran shield technology for 2 weeks straight without sleep. The warheads detonated at precise moments when the enemy shields cycled frequencies. Explosions blossomed across the Velcran formation. Ships that had seemed invulnerable suddenly found their protection stripped away. Damage reports flooded Fleet Commander Thane's displays. His perfect formation was already compromised. Then the human ships emerged from behind Earth's moon. They were a strange mix of captured Velcran vessels, modified Earth spacecraft, and hybrid designs that combined both technologies. They did not form organized battle lines. Instead, they scattered and attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, using tactics that violated every principle of organized fleet combat. Converted cargo ship accelerated directly toward a Velcran battleship. The alien commander targeted it with every weapon, assuming it was a suicide run. At the last moment, the human ship released dozens of smaller craft that had been hidden in its cargo bay. The swarm of fighters overwhelmed the battleship's point defenses and struck its engines. The massive warship lost power and began drifting, helpless. Another human vessel, damaged and venting atmosphere, set its remaining fuel to overload and crashed into a Velcran carrier. Both ships exploded in a fireball that consumed 2 nearby destroyers. The humans were trading their lives for enemy ships without hesitation. Fleet Commander Thane watched his carefully planned assault dissolve into chaos. The humans fought without honor, without proper formation, without any regard for their own survival. They were willing to sacrifice everything for even minor tactical advantages. It was madness. It was Effective Science Officer Kryn, who had been transferred to the reinforcement fleet to advise Thane, stood at her station with resignation clear in her posture. Commander, I tried to warn the High Command. Humans are a survival species from a death world. They have been fighting and dying for millions of years. War is not something they do. It is what they are. We cannot defeat them through conventional conquest. Thane refused to accept this assessment. We have 300 ships. We have superior technology. We will overwhelm them through sheer numbers. But even as he spoke, he watched another 5 of his vessels disappear from the tactical display. destroyed by humans who fought with creativity, born from desperation and determination forged through millennia of survival. The battle raged for 18 hours. The Velcron fleet held every technological advantage, but humanity held something more valuable. They held the understanding that losing meant extinction, and extinction was not acceptable. When their weapons ran out, they rammed enemy ships. When their ships were disabled, they used them as kinetic weapons. When they were surrounded, they fought hard or not by the time Fleet Commander Thane accepted that the battle could not be won. He had lost 97 ships. The humans had lost far more, but they kept fighting. Their planet was still defended. Their spirit was unbroken. And worst of all, they had captured 15 more Velcron vessels intact, which meant they would learn even more about the technology they were facing. Thane ordered a retreat to the outer solar system to regroup. As his fleet pulled back, he received an urgent transmission from Velcron High Command. But it was not reinforcements. It was panic. Human ships had struck 3 more supply depots, 2 communication relays, and a minor colony world. The attacks had been surgical and devastating. Humanity had demonstrated that they could reach any target in Velcron space. The High Command's message was clear. End this war immediately. The economic cost was becoming unsustainable. Colony worlds were demanding protection. Trade routes required constant military escort. The entire empire was straining under the burden of defending against an enemy they had foolishly awakened. Negotiate whatever terms necessary. Just end this before it destroys us. Thane felt humiliation burn through him, but he also felt relief. He opened a channel to Earth. This is Fleet Commander Thane of the Velcron Empire. I am authorized to discuss terms of peace. Will you meet with our delegation? The response came from Secretary General Chen, her voice carrying across space with absolute clarity. We will meet, but understand this clearly. You came to our home. You killed our people. You tried to enslave our species. The terms will reflect these crimes. If you want peace, you will pay for it with more than words. The negotiations took place on a neutral station that humans had hastily constructed in orbit around Mars, using a combination of Earth and Velcron technology. The human delegation included military leaders, scientists, and diplomats from every major nation. The Velcron delegation arrived expecting to negotiate from a position of strength despite their losses. They were wrong. General Morrison laid out humanity's demands with calm precision. Full reparations for all damages caused during the invasion. Complete technology transfer, including faster-than-light travel, energy generation, medical advances, and manufacturing techniques. Formal recognition of Earth as an independent, sovereign power, with full rights in galactic affairs. A non-aggression treaty enforced by the Velcron High Command. Unrestricted access to all galactic trade networks and star charts. And finally, the immediate withdrawal of all Velcron forces from Earth's solar system. Fleet. Commander Thane stared at the human general in disbelief. These terms are excessive. You are demanding that we give you everything. You are a single planet. We are an empire of 72 worlds. We cannot simply surrender our technological advantages to primitives who barely achieved SPACEFL IGT. The Chinese representative leaned forward, her expression cold. You are an empire of 72 conquered worlds. But you are not an empire of 73 because we stopped you. And now those 72 worlds know that resistance is possible. How long before they rebel? How long before your empire collapses because you can no longer maintain the illusion of invincibility? Science Officer Kryn, sitting beside Thane as an advisor, spoke quietly. Commander, they are correct. News of this war is spreading through our territory. Other species are questioning why they accepted conquest. The economic strain of defending our entire empire against potential human strikes is already causing problems. If we continue this war, we risk losing everything. The negotiations continued for 6 days. The Velcron delegation tried to negotiate reduced terms. The humans refused every compromise. They had won the war, and they intended to secure a peace that would prevent any future invasion. Finally, with authorization from the High Command, Thane agreed to humanity's demands. The Treaty of Seoul was signed by representatives of every Earth nation and the Velcron High Command. The ceremony was broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing the moment when a primitive species forced an empire to its knees through sheer determination and refusal to surrender. 5 years passed. Earth transformed beyond recognition. With access to galactic technology and trade, humanity expanded rapidly. Colonies were established on Mars, Europa, and Titan. Human ships explored neighboring star systems. Earth joined the Galactic Council, not as a conquered world, but as an independent power that had earned respect through combat. But humanity also became something the galaxy had not expected. They became the species that other worlds called when they needed help. Human military advisors trained defense forces on worlds that feared conquest. Human engineers solved problems that other species thought impossible. Human doctors treated injuries on dozens of worlds, using their experience. From a death world that had tried to kill them for millions of years, the phrase human tactics entered galactic language as shorthand for aggressive, creative, and unconventional warfare. Other species hired human mercenaries not because they were the strongest, but because they never stopped fighting and never accepted defeat. In the Velcron archives, the file on Earth was updated one final time. The notation was simple and clear. Planet Earth, Sol System. Classification, Death World, Class 9. Dominant species, humans. Status, independent sovereign power. Recommended action, do not engage under any circumstances. Economic and diplomatic relations acceptable. Military conflict inadvisable at any cost. Additional notes. This species spent millions of years surviving on a planet that actively tried to kill them. They evolved by fighting predators, environmental disasters, and eventually each other. War is not an aberration for them. It is their natural state. They adapted to every threat their world presented. And when they conquered their world, they turned their skills toward conquering space itself. They are dangerous not because they are aggressive, but because they refuse to accept defeat. They will sacrifice everything before they surrender. Any species that attacks Earth should expect total war with no possibility of negotiation until complete victory or extinction. The Velcron Empire learned this lesson at tremendous cost. Do not repeat our mistake. A new species discovered the database entry 20 years later. Their scientists were excited about a newly discovered world in the Sol System. It seemed perfect for colonization. Their military began planning an invasion fleet. Their commander reviewed the file on Earth with growing alarm. Then read the final addendum added by a species that had attempted trade negotiations with humanity. Asterisk comments for next.